Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the regulatory framework of all these kind of products that we have been talking about. So Isabel has already introduced the drug development life cycle, and for advanced therapy products it's not so different, just regarding to the life cycle, as other drugs, conventional drugs. We already have a very high regulated environment when developing a drug. So in the non-clinical stages, as we said, we already have some regulations, both in the national agencies or in the EMA, in the European framework. And we have also, from the beginning, some requirements regarding to the manufacturing of the batches. Okay. So we had different requirements if we are in the non-clinical batches, if we are just manufacturing for testing the biological activity, the admin, administration, distribution, toxicity in ex vivo or in vivo tests in laboratory or in animal models. Okay, but when we are just already developing the non-clinical package for starting the clinical trials, we already have other regulations, okay, other requirements for the manufacturing of the products. Once we are in humans, in clinical trials, phase 1, 2, 3, we are developing all the investigation investigational medicine products dossier with all the information from the non-clinical studies, and now also from the clinical trial that we are developing. And we already have regulations on how we are manufacturing these clinical batches. Okay? And the big, for me, the more complex process is this technology transfer from the small batches for the clinical trials to industrialization. How we can do an advanced therapy product for commercialization, distribution, pricing and reimbursement, and so on. This is the more complex step. We are in some kind, I think, we are now looking for the business model, the best model for pricing and reimbursement, and so on in these very new products. Okay. We are already used to know about biotechnological products, that kind of products that are produced by a biotechnological process. Okay, we have hormones, cytokines, coagulation factors. All these kind of products are already in the market, and we know how they work. We already have gene therapy and cell therapy, tissue engineering, and these only these two are considered advanced therapy medicinal products. Okay? We already have the biologics products, as we already see. We have, for instance, the platelet-rich plasma, that is a borderline product between medicine and non-medicines. We are always in this very high-tech products. I say sometimes wandering between two lands, and a lot of lands, between medicine, non-medicine, biologics, biotechnological products, and so on. But we are only talking about these three products. Okay. Okay. So as we said, we have some regulatory requirements to transfer R&D products to a human medicine scenario. We are talking about an investigational medicine product, always that the active substance or placebo is used as a reference in the clinical trial. Okay? Both the placebo and the active substance are considered investigational medicine products. And all for the products will already be authorized for for a formulation or for an indication. If we are using it in a different way, it is also an investigational medicine product. Okay. Now we have here the three definitions of the advanced therapy medicinal product. And the difference when talking about this product is how defining it in the IMPD, in the dossier. Okay? This is an example. We have some plasmids, some master cell bank, the vector, and the passing cells. And this will be the starting materials that we have. The same as in conventional drugs, we have some chemical substances, okay? And then we have the drug substance that in this case are the transfected cells or the bad cells, okay? So when we are defining the ATMP in the dossier, we will see the drug substance in these starting materials and the transfected cells, the final products. We have to describe all the control of this material that we are doing during the manufacturing processes, and the control of the drug substance. And of course, in the case of the drug product, as are the transfected cells, formulation, vials, etc., we have to already define all the control of drug products that are this final product. It's just an example to see that it's the same, but a little different. Okay? So, as already said Isabel, we have the gene therapy medicinal product. It can be ex vivo gene therapy or in vivo gene therapy, and depending if we do the transfection inside the body of the patient or not. And to define this kind of products, as we say already, the active substance, it's a nucleic acid, okay? And this nucleic acid is the base for the pharmacological effects. Of course, vaccines are not included in this definition, okay? And in the case of somatic cell therapy, medicinal products, we already have the definition, but I want to make a point here, because it says cell or tissues that have been subject to substantial manipulation. This is the key of the question, okay? What is a substantial manipulation? In the EMA regulation, they say that this kind of manipulation are not considered as substantial manipulation. So if you cut, grind, shape, centrifugate, and so on, they are not substantial manipulation. So they are not the product that you obtain with these processes are not considered ATMP. Okay? And also we have another point, that is that the cells must be intended to be used in a different essential function. What is this? We have to change the place where the cells are going to work in the body, or we have to change a different, say, location or wherever. Okay, the function will be already changed. Okay, so we have here is the example. If we extract bone marrow for the patient, so I'm going to drink because I have the voice awful. Difficult. No.
Try number one. You're over, but.
The hands. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So if we extract the bone marrow of a patient, we'll do the isolation of a cell population, for example, mononuclear cells, and then reinfuse the mononuclear cells into the patient. The patient is not considered medicines, okay? But if we do the same extraction, the isolation of the same cell population, but then we administrate these mononuclear cells in a different place to do a different function in the cardiac muscle, for instance, as it implies a change in the essential function, it would be a medicament. Okay? And then we have another kind of products in the ATMP that are tissue engineered products. As Isabel said before, we have an engineered cell or tissue, and it's going to regenerate, repair, replace a human tissue. And it may contain cells or tissue, maybe human, or also from animals, okay? And it may be viable or non-viable, the cells, and maybe it may also contain additional substances, okay? So this is important. The non-viable or viable cells are also the key issue to consider a product ATMP or not. If the non-viable human cells are making a pharmacological or immunological action in the patient, they are considered ATMP. If not, if they are only there, okay, it is not an ATMP. So it's important the definition of the product. And combine, as the name says, we have maybe medical devices, in this case, as we said before, scaffolds or so on, or active implantable medical devices with cells on the surface, and viable cells or tissues in this case, or non-viable cells or tissues that have an action primary, that of the device. Okay, the pharmacological action is more from the tissues or the cells than from the device. Okay, if not, it would be a medical device. Normal, it wouldn't be an ATMP.
Could you better explain the last differentiation, because I don't get it.
It is related with the other slide, because we have non-viable cells. These non-viable cells make some action in the patient, in the final product. They are considered tissue engineered. Okay.
For instance, let's say that you have cardiac valves made from genetically modified bovines or pigs, and these are non-viable cells that will be implanted as valves. Is that an ATMP or a device?
It depends. If you can discuss with the agency that it doesn't have a pharmacological effect.
It does not.
It's not.
It's not.
So it's borderline.
Okay.
We are
borderline.
always in a borderline environment. It's difficult. Normally when we discuss with the agency.
I don't understand the last sentence. With action that can be considered as primary to that of the devices referred to.
Yeah, it means that the medical device do an action on the patient, but to consider a combined advanced therapy medicinal product, the non-viable cells must have at least as a role similar to those from the device. How to say?
If you have two aspects, the cells and the matrix. What is your primary mechanism of action?
Yeah.
Who does what? What is the important part? What the cells does, or what the scaffold, the device does?
Okay.
So this basically the aspect of it, what defines the efficacy or the potency of a product is the main mechanism of action behind this.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And usually, if you add cells, it's by definition itself. If it's a living cell, then it's hard to argue that it's not the living cell that is doing the important part.
Sorry for this story.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think it's complex.
It is.
Okay. So regarding to the regulation in Europe, we have the clinical research regulated by the national agencies. But when we want to to apply for a marketing authorization in the European Union, we must go through the centralized procedure, okay, in the EMA. But we already have an exemption, that is the hospital exemption, where that applies from compassionate use for consolidated use, those uses that, as Isabel said before, that were already in the clinical practice, and we know perfectly how they work. And in case of non-industrial therapy, that is also a borderline definition. Okay, we have here the article and the directive, and this kind of developments are going through the national agency also. Okay, and they are similar to marketing authorization, but for hospitals or clinical practice. Okay. And as we say, we have the Committee for Medicinal Products for Human Use in Europe, but we already have our specific Committee for Advanced Therapies. Here we have the different composition of the committee. And from 2009, that is ongoing, they have reviewed 15 marketing authorization applications only for this kind of products. And we already have the classification, that is, as we said, it's very difficult to know what is an ITMP and what not. So the CAT make a classification for your products. And it is a free advice normally. And more than 100 has been submitted from 2009. Okay. Then we have already the certification, that it's a special advice only for SME, for small and medium enterprise. And this gives you some specific information on your kind of products. It's more for looking for investment or to certificate where you are and what you have to do until the marketing authorization. Okay. More than 100 scientific advice also, and this TIP is for pediatric uses. Okay, they did 30 pediatric uses, okay. More or less. Here we have the quality system that apply to all medicines for human use, not only to ATMP. We have the GLP for non-clinical data. It is mandatory only for the non-clinical package for safety, okay, but it's also recommended for all the animal models and in vitro ex vivo laboratory tests. Then we have the GMP, the manufacturing process, okay, and the clinical practices. We already have to work under the good clinical practices. Okay. Here we have a scheme of the implementation of a policy system for production, for manufacturing. Here we have the starting materials before the approval of materials, and we have also to define all the logistics issue, the shipment. During the process, we have internal controls of the process and also external quality controls. We have to control also the final product and the monitoring of the environmental impact, and of course all the control of the facilities. Okay, the final product, the release of the final product, and the shipment until the patient administration. All these equipment, facilities, personnel must be qualified, maintained, and training of the personnel, etc. And the documentation is the key for the GXP processes. We have to document all we do. We have to define all we do, all the process, and know all that happened during the process. Okay. the main difference between manufacturing an ATMP or a conventional medicinal product. The raw materials in this case are chemical, and in this case we have also biological substances. Of course, the type of product in this case is generic for patients, and we have to differentiate between autologous or allogenic ATMPs because it's very different. Autologous is from the same patient to be administered in their own patient, and allogenic are from different patients. Okay? The batch size, we are talking about very small batch size in the case of ATMP. The qualification of the personnel and the complexity of production should be very, very complex, much more than in the case of conventional medicinal products. The automatization is very difficult. Most of the processes are manual. And of course, due to all of these characteristics, we have most cost per batch. The cost of production is higher also. And the stability of the products, that is one of the key issues in the development of ATMP, is that they have a short shelf life. They have to be administered very, very quickly after production. Shipment and distribution is very, very complex, is one of the key issues also, and the administration is also different. Okay. Any doubt or something? Okay. Okay. So just maybe because of the time, so I'm going to go faster. Okay, we can say difficulties in implementation. Maybe I don't know if we can send the presentation if you want to have it. If it's interesting for you. Very important in the facilities is the design of the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, but it is very similar to the GMP facilities for other conventional products, so it's not so different. Okay, just at a glance, we have at the moment 4 okay. Medicines products ATMP in Europe. Controselect, Libera, this is a tissue engineered product. Libera is a gene therapy medicinal product. And Matthew was a GP ATMP combined, sorry, but it was suspended on November last year for decision of the company. No problems with safety or nothing. Okay, these two are cell-based medicinal products. Okay. Then I put here some data on regenerative medicine and advanced therapy overview worldwide. Yes, more than 200 companies. Here you have the cell-based immunotherapies that are more related with oncology and antimicrobial agents. Yeah. No, you can check it later if you want. Only numbers. Okay. That's it. Any question?
Okay. We would have liked to now offer you a more in-depth vision of all this world of the advanced therapy, with more talks of some. We came here, you see, with only one example of an advanced therapy, and the rest is just regulation and an overview. Nevertheless, we are open to questions and whatever you would.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the balance between the cost of the final production of this advanced therapy in this condition now? So with the rules, with many problems and difficulties, and so to go to the end of the process and the number of patients you have to treat with these specific advanced therapies. So do you think that the cost is equilibrated, or is it very expensive for a small proportion of patients?
You can answer if you want. It's a difficult question because
The answer would be no. Unless,
What is
to
no?
be clear,
Sorry.
to be
Is
clear,
it expensive or not?
it is very expensive to do
Yeah.
it. It is complex to do it. This is nothing to do with to deliver a therapy for a big market. People are like hypertension or cholesterol or whatever other thing. These kind of therapies are thought for very specific and small unmet needs that cannot be solved with any other way. This is when she was explaining the three routes, the hospital exemption and the centralized procedure, and this comes from the very first origin, that some doctors actually thought about any solution for a certain patient. So this is still the spirit. So you have you have a legislation dedicated, this hospital exemption, to this kind of handmade therapy for certain patients that have no other possibilities. But the industrial development is more, as I was trying to explain in my talk, is more thought for specific targets of people that has no other option. For example, pancreatic cancer, as he's saying. This kind of target. Sorry?
Yeah, no, just a comment on the cost. There is a good example, which is Provenge with the Cipulizin.
Sorry?
There is an example of Provenge with the Cipulizin T. The cost of the treatment, it's $90,000, sorry. Each. $90,000 per patient. It's very heavy. Actually, the Dendron is probably soon bankrupt because it didn't work. It's too expensive to work intensive. You have to make the leukapheresis, send it to Provenge, and then have it manipulated and re-inject. In between, there have been other drugs that came in, which were seemed much simpler to so the sales are by far not what was expected.
Yeah.
And the cost was too high also. Well, it's very high also. So it's very attractive, but the regulatory requirement is such that it makes the things very heavy.
That's true, and this is the reason. Yeah.
And if I may, just more general questions, or because I'm getting, I think, well, it's good for me because I'm a consultant, so that if the regulations are very stringent, it brings me work. That's great. But on the other hand, I find that the regulations are going much too far currently, especially for this type of approaches, but also for early stage development. It's as if there was a need for regulation, but we went from nothing to too much, and there was not considered an in-between, and that's very, very counterproductive in terms of innovation and everything. But I discussing sometimes with regulators or whoever, it doesn't seem to be a trend to try to put some pressure on them.
Yeah, it exists. I can tell you my own experience.
Okay.
This is the reason I bored you with the history of the farm.
Yeah.
Which was to put a perspective.
Yeah.
Because I had experience of being at the IMA discussing a clinical trial program for a cell therapeutic product.
Yeah.
And they understand that for certain patients there is no option.
Yeah.
There is no, so if this is the case, they are open to different ways. For example, these ways,
Holoclar is in conditional approval.
conditional approvals. This, for example, in the clinical program, the typical phase 1, 2, 3 could not apply.
Yeah. Okay.
You can negotiate.
Yeah.
I had that kind of discussion.
Yeah, but
So-
up to a certain point.
At a certain but because if they see the only condition is that you are not going there with a very complex story, saying that you are going to treat cholesterol.
No, I fully agree with that. And I've been negotiating with them and always got, as long as you are, I would say, reasonable and really, not on a good faith, but I mean, you are not asking for things that are too good. But coming back to also what you had in your presentation with the requirements that they've increased, especially for instance for biology, something like that, what I live almost every day is that for phase 1 products and compounds, the requirements are almost simplified commercial or phase 3 requirements.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bit downside, but not that much. It makes that for a small biotech or a biotech to get a product in the phase 1, it costs between 4 and 6 million euros. And most of this is on analytics, it's not on production. It's on analytics, paperwork to get a GMP, whereas it could be much simplified. I fully understand that there must be safeguards, especially regarding potential viral transmission and other things, that there must be at least some confirmation of the product, the quality of the product, but not to that extent, because this costs almost half of the price of the production. And it's counterproductive, because small biotechs, which are those companies where the new compounds come from, have enormous difficulties to get this money to make it, because investors, that it doesn't bring value, added value to the program unless until the end of the phase 1. So it's an investment at loss, and really it's. I do think that the regulator should really take this into consideration in order to further stimulate the innovation, because it doesn't improve very much the risk management. I mean, it just kind of you have the impression really is that it's mindsets that have just tried to be a bit more simplified, but we still cover our asses, and we don't really think of what is essential.
I agree, regulators.
Yeah, but I think we have to discuss this more and talk about this more and more and more.
If you
and dig
go,
into
for example, we always recommend to go for scientific advice.
Yeah, I do it.
You go there, you
I
discuss.
do 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, because it's the only way, and the only...
but you cannot discuss on the IMPT requirements.
I mean, that's pretty reasonable. I mean, what are you trying to do? You're trying to develop a drug, right? I mean, you take a drug, you go to the pharmacy, and you expect that the pill you take is going to have the same potency if you buy it in this pharmacy or the other one, right? So it's not again.
I'm talking about
second,
phase 1.
No. Secondly, you expect that there's safety, right? That any type of adverse event has been described, at least solidly enough, so that you know that toxicity can be eliminated. And based on that, I think the margin for this gray area is limited, because I mean, if you start giving too much leniency, you have this stem cell tourism that exists around the world.
It's absolutely not what
and you get cells that have not been controlled correctly, and then you have patients that got a tumor developed out of this. So where do you put the cutoff line? And the regulatory agency, by definition, is safety first. And I'm sorry, I mean, a fistula patient is not going to die of the fistula, so you better make sure that the product is well characterized.
No, actually, I am the same line as you, but I think we are not talking about the same thing. I say there must be safeguard, there must be requirements for safety. The situation that was before was very dangerous. The situation, but we went from here to there, whereas there is a middle term. Let's take a good example. In the manufacturing of biologic product, to get the GMP approval, you have to have all the methods, all your analytical procedures qualified, at least qualified, if not validated.
For phase 1, you don't need validation.
Sorry?
For phase 1, you do not need validation.
Qualification you need.
Yeah.
You don't need validation, but the difference in cost between the qualification and validation is what, 10 to 20% difference. I do it every day, so I know. And I just did it this morning.
That should be an end.
And for some of these tests, they are not improving the safety of the product at all. But it costs you 50% of the production. We could definitely reduce to the essential there, and without impacting on the safety of the program. But that's an open
Okay, I think that we could continue discussions on the lunch or wherever. And thank you very much for attending.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.